Alright, so I'm going to get started on this this bike here, and let's kind of go from most important to least important. And the very first thing on the list is to make a shim for the bottom bearing on the triple tree, because it's got slop where it meets the pivot. But I got that kind of set up in a lift, and I want to spin the bike around and take the front fork off to go do that. So we're probably going to go jump to 2 and 3, and then go back to number 1. And number 2 is bolting the tank down and trying to see if we can get it to fit a little more forward, and then the seat. So we're going to probably work with the tank and the seat, or at least the tank right now. And you kind of want to move it this far forward, and right now it comes to about right here, and you kind of see where they did some grinding to get it to fit. So I kind of just threw a caliper on there to get my idea of what I'm working with for girth of sorts, and then how much the distance of the tank that it is there, so you can kind of see it's got some clearance problems. We talked about grinding some of this down and to make it clear, but I actually think the tank is got some a bit of a lip to it too. So I'm going to see if the tank has any kind of little bit of a spring to it. I may just try expanding it a little bit and see if we can kind of do a little bit of both, a little bit on the tank and a little on the front end, because if I think I take that down too much, I may be kind of compromising it too much. So let me see how I make out. I might as well pop it on and show what we're looking at as I drop it on the floor. And so you can kind of see where we're running into right now. It's as far forward as it's going, and we want to try to get it up to about there. So let me see, because the other problem is in the back here is the fill. That's the fill. It's got a internal oil tank, and that is the fill for it. So this gets oil in it, and that recirculates in the motor. So we need to make it so that way, when you pop the seat out, you have access to that. And we're going to go trim this back, but let's stay with the tank. All right, so I got a lip on the corner of my vise. I actually had ground this out once before for a different job. It was kind of round before, so I kind of cut into it because I had to do the same idea on something else to spread it. And so anyway, the corner of the vise is kind of ground away on the two ends, and this is the width of the bike frame. So now we got that much play in it. Of course, it's going to spring back. So I just gave it a little bit. We'll see what happens, and then let me go relax it and see where it is, and then I'll keep kind of tweaking a little bit and see if we can get that to bow out without damaging it. Alright, so I did some grinding on the frame too, areas that was touching, and got it. I'm probably an inch forward, I would say. It's probably under a ½ inch from that mark. But I figure the best thing would be to do right now is to walk the bike backwards out of the stand, and we turn it from lock to lock and make sure that we're not going to have any interference problems. Bear with me. Just throw that seat anywhere. Alright, let's get that guy off. That guy off. And hold on for the ride. We're going to go downhill. Alright, let's make sure that we got plenty. The handlebars is probably the closest. That's a finger's width. And the same on that side. I don't know. I think that'd probably be a good distance right there. If he wants it more forward. Nah. That's going to be where it's going to be, right? And so now we can probably slice this out of our way, and we'll have access to the cap, and then we'll figure out how to start getting the sucker mounted on there. Let me go wheel it back up into place. Alright, so I'm to the point where I got a bracket made for the front. I'm in the process of going to start tacking a nut to the frame and then the tab to the tank, and I'm trying to square it up. And I put a level on the bike frame, and the back tire got that level, but that's dark. Everything is nothing is straight. Look at the headlights. The headlights are out of whack. The handlebars are out of whack. I tried using trying to figure out what the center of the tank is, and you're like, well, is it that? where is it that, you know, the gas cap and that weld don't parallel each other, so I'm trying to do my best to tack it pretty much square, but you know, again, there's really nothing to kind of go off of but by eye. So I'm trying to split the gap back in here. Not that that's going to really matter that much. We can still fudge that until the back one's welded. And even this isn't right. The fill, it's not in the center of the frame. It's off to that side. So my opinion is we're just going to do the best we can, and that's it. You know, this is not time is of the essence. You know, it's trying to get as much done for as little time invested as possible. It's not a slow, long build, so to speak. So I'm going to move forward before I spend all the time just trying to fudge a gas tank into place. So I get the welder out, we'll get that tacked up, and we'll start working on some rear brackets. All right, so the front one's kind of claimed its position right now, and I'm trying to figure out about that, how I want to make the tank and the seat kind of match up to each other. And one of the issues I'm having is you can see where the fill is actually touching right on the cap. And the other problem is that I do not have is that there is a motor mount that comes from this bracket and attaches to the head. I think it's these 4 bolts. I'm not positive of that, but the problem is I do not have it. And because I do not have it, we talked about putting a bracket going across the bottom of it, and you know, with rubber and all that, and kind of tied in that way. I think I'm gonna go and try to avoid that area just because. So, you know, again, I want to build something and have something that's in the way, and I literally do not know what it looks like and how much room it takes. So I think I want to come off the back of the tank. There's a little bit of room on each side of the tank, and probably weld a nut right to here. I know he's worried about contaminating the tank, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. I know it's got oil on the inside, but I think if I just do some, if I tack and cool around the nut, I think I'll be just fine. It's not like it's gasoline, it's only oil. It'll only make a small explosion, right? So I'm thinking along that line, and I'm also maybe make it somewhat adjustable so that maybe the tank can kind of go up a little bit, because again, we have interference with the seat. So it's not like we can kind of modify that seat all that much. Might be able to hammer some of the center of it down, but it's just a pan, you know. Maybe I'll work on that first. Maybe I'll see if I can kind of knock some of this metal down just to kind of clear that cap a little bit. And if I can't, then that tank's definitely got to come up some to have the 2 gaps not look ridiculous. Alright, so I got that seat attached, and just kind of, again, I decided to pretty much try and eyeball everything and try to make a line down the center of the bike, because too many things are out of kilter. Like the tire is not centered over this. I went for this for the center, and I tried using that line coming up and then that line lining up with the gas cap, and you get the idea. So it's got a little release pin on this side right here. You pull that, and that just went into a tab. It worked out pretty good. And again, the front bracket I welded on, the back bracket I put 2 bolts in there and welded the bolts so that you can still remove the seat. So you take these 2 nuts off, you can get off that bracket and pull it off, because the, I don't know if I showed it already, but the hinges, the pins, one faces that way, one faces that way. So if I weld them both on, you can never get that seat off. So that allows you that opportunity. And then next is going back to the gas tank, figure out where we want that, the rear mounts. So I'm going to probably grab a couple of pieces of flat steel and put a nut and bolt combination on them. Try to figure out, I'm kind of guessing right around here, and I got to make it so that the tank still can come out of there. So maybe a hair over top center. I don't know, but let me get some pieces of metal and a couple of bolts, and we'll figure it out. All right, so yeah, took it all apart and finished welded everything, and again, he's going to chase hardware. I just got stuff in there and I'll mock it up. But that one's permanently welded. Where's that little tit? And then you know, the back one's the same thing. You can chase hardware for that, but it's permanently welded and quite stout. You know, that tank's not going to go anywhere. I don't know if they were originally rubber mounted or if they were just solid mounted, but solid mounted now, right? So I think the next thing we're going to go jump on, which is the first thing on the list, was getting the bushing for the bottom of the triple tree to be not having all that slop in there. So I'm probably going to take the bike and we'll take it and spin it around on the lift so I can get that front end out of there. I have a feeling disassembling and reassembling the front end is going to take longer than actually making the bushing, but we'll see. Let's see how it goes. It spun around on the lift there, and it's jacked up. Front tire's about 2 inches off the ground. Just kind of show you what the next thing we're working on is that. Kind of actually looks like both of them are doing it, the top and the bottom. So that doesn't make for too stable of a ride, I don't think. So, trying to figure out what the best way to go take that apart is. Mine, the lower one is bolted on, it's not welded. So this guy and this guy is welded on this one, so it's fixed dimension from top to bottom. How you go about adjusting the taper in that, I'm not quite sure, but I guess we're gonna go and find out, aren't we? That actually wasn't so bad. But I did not find what I expected to find. I thought the bearings were loose on the main. Like, that's decent there. I mean, the bearings are, their races are kind of crappy, but it's not a wheel bearing. I'm not that concerned. And the bearing is tight. Just gonna spin this up without dropping it. Get my foot under the wheel. So I expected to see play between here and here. That's not the case. It's flopping around the cage. So I think what might be the issue is just that he doesn't have enough room to crank down from the top and the bottom so the two tapers can take the play out. That's what I think is happening. So I'm going to see if I can get this bearing to come up. Actually, I wonder if I should just leave it there. Why would I have to raise this one? Or can I just make a spacer that lowers this one, right? Pretty much the same thing, as long as it's not bottoming out on the sides here. So I'm gonna go pop that back in, double check that, and if so, we'll just make a spacer, but we'll make the spacer for the top. Alright, so I think I got it figured out. The bike is kind of put back together. I got straps holding the wheel and the correct angle. So here's the deal. Let me get the nut off of it. Okay. So basically everything was trying to be held by that top nut, which doesn't work for one reason. And it had, this is how it was put together. So I had the bottom bearing, top bearing, both of them have races in it. This was just kind of put over like a spacer. It's really not threaded, it's just there as a spacer. Then the risers were attached like so, and then there was a nut put on top. Follow me? So now it's trying to use whatever this down pressure can be to adjust the taper of the two bearings. And that's just not going to work because we need something kind of independent of its own. I mean, I'm sure you can kind of shim it, but you don't have any jam nut effect. You're only having one nut locking it down. You're not having one nut locking against another. So I mean, you could I'm sure you can dial it in with shims. You know, I'm sure I can kind of shim this a little bit further and take up the slot between the two, and you can kind of fine tune it, but that's kind of iffy. That's that top nut trying to do all that. What really should be is that should be threaded down much further and run your own independent nut down. You figure, you know, you set your preload on that, get rid of all your play, and then make shims up probably to make the distance up so that this height and this height are all on the same plane, and then you can kind of bolt the top together. I don't know, I doubt very much that this is going to be able to be tapped. I have a feeling that that is going to be fairly stout, hardened. It may or may not, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to go, and one of two things I could do. Worst case scenario is if I can get like two thinner, or even one thinner nut like that, and then run the other one on top. At least I could lock it from the top and kind of, you know, play with the dimension with shims. But before I do that, I'm going to see if I can find a die rather, and see if we can elongate these threads further down here. And if that's the case, then, you know, that'd be more the proper way to fix it. So let me see if I can go dig up and see if we can chase that issue. All right, remember what I said, the repair will take less time than taking the front end off? Yeah, I'm paying for that. All right, so I tried finding a die that would come down and giving me more threads on that, but I found nothing to that avail. So I pretty much am putting it back together the way it was, which is this bolt type thing, this nut with clearance, so that it effectively becomes a big spacer. And I went my hoard, and I have a machine bushing kit, but unfortunately 3/4 inch seemed to have been a popular size, so I only have one, and so that will be that guy. And I'm trying to look kind of like parallel from that going across and see if we'd be able to crush that play out of there. And of course, the other thing I was talking about was I needed to be able to do a nut with a jam nut on top. So I found a crusty old nut, and I stole the one that was on the bottom, which was chrome. Replace that with a crusty one, and if he wants to change that in the future, he can. So that's the one that was on there, and what I like about it is the profile is nice and thin. So I'm thinking if I can get that dimension correct, and then we start putting this stuff back together, put a nut on it, and put this nut on it, and then run the other one over the top. Let's see what we get. So if I'm able to do that, you know, that, and then the other one, will that be enough to crank the whole thing together? So that's what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to go do a bunch of trial fitting and see if I can come up with the correct packing for the inside of this to get rid of the play, and then we can fine tune it with these two. And then again, the fat nut that was on top, we're going to put that one on top as a jam nut so you can lock one against the other. You know, not the best, but you know, you're working with what you got. So, and I give no warranty with this whatsoever, so if the front end falls off, I know nothing. I disavow any knowledge of this video. It will self-destruct in 5 seconds. So let me go crank them down, see what kind of preload I can get on that, and I should be able to like kind of fine tune it a little bit too, you know. It all depends on how hard these guys crank down. I'm also wondering, I'm looking at it now as we're putting it back together, that there is space between there and there, but does that matter if I crank down on that? Looks like it's not in the center, right? So maybe it might be just the play that's in there. Well, I'm going to go fudge with this for a little bit, and then I'll turn you back on when I figure out something. How's that? Okay, remember I answered my last question. I was talking about the play between that guy and that guy. Yeah, that has to be gone, or else this whole upper section because that's where it's attached, is going to float up and down. So I got to make a spacer for there also. So I went in my hoard. I did find one that fit the ID of it. Pretty close. A little polishing should take care of that. And but we got to take down the outside diameter so that will fit in there and take the play out of that. So I got a little bit of lathe time to go do. I'll go whittle us some nice little spacer out of that, and we'll continue on from there. See, I gotta clean that hole up a little bit too. It's got a bit of a ridge to it. All right, I gotta make that the size of that. So I think we're going to keep whittling on it and see how close we get. Precision by eye. Let's make sure the belts. Make sure our lathe is still working. Contact. Just make sure belt tension is good. Our wheel and back gears are no. We're good. It's about 80th hour, so it's got to come off. So we are at, what are we at? 940. Let me just double check that. Like 943. We are at. We were at 985. Give her a couple more passes. I could probably make it where it's a little bit of a press fit too. That way it kind of just stays in that top housing. 70. $50. And so we're getting to the polishing state now. We knock about 4th thou off of it. Let's just try it. I didn't even run it in at all. I just left it where it was and let it kind of polish. Yeah, 48. How's your calibrated eye on that one? What do you guys think? I think we're at like 45. We were at, we were under. Nah, all right. I can take it out and I'm getting 43, something like that. Let's go and pop that sucker out of there, and we'll see if it's if I can kind of tap that in. And if that's the case, yeah, we're good. That's good. Can't ask for tighter than that, right? That's about right on the money. So let's stick that back in. I'm going to go take the parting tool, and we'll slice that puppy off of there and bring it back over to the front end. Alright, so tap that back together, and then you can kind of see what I was talking about. That took care of all that place. So that's all nice and snugged up. So I'm going to go run the thin nut down on it, crank down on it, and then I want to take the front straps off. I want to see how the play is from left to right kind of deal. Make sure everything's kind of gone. So I'm going to grab a socket, run that down, see how that is. I could probably also fine tune it here if I have to, make shims for this area just to kind of change that if it's too tight, you know. So let's go see what we got when I run it home though. So that worked out pretty good. Between the two of them, it had actually two issues then. It was the preload on the bearings having play, and then of course that upper one being not sized to the size of the top half of the triple tree. So that small nut that was on the bottom is in there, and that's run down, and then I just used the original one and ran that one down on top of it. Danny, what I would do, I would probably try and buy another, probably two, put a new one on the bottom and a new one on top, the same size, and then just use that as a jam nut, and it'll look more flush because that one's fairly larger. It's larger than the other one. It's got it, I kind of cranked down on it just a little bit more. Let's see, grab it. So there's nothing, it's got no play in it. It rocks back and forth with just a hint of drag, but I figured that way more than having play in it, and that can be tweaked out of it. Again, if you back that guy off just a hair, but I have a feeling once it moves around a little bit, it's probably gonna be just about right. So that's how I'm leaving it. So I'm gonna go pop the handlebars back on it, and I don't know what kind of time we're running into. It's 6:45 at night. So that might wrap it up for tonight. I may do a little bit more tweaking by the time I get the handlebars on. And maybe they will call that the end of this video. It's getting there. Again, it's all the rough in of everything, getting a play out of everything, and then he's going to go and, of course, clean everything up, body work the tank and body work the frame and all, and get nice shiny hardware. My job is just to see what I am doing now. That's easy to say. I think the next thing is the front brake lever, and again we have to it's got a little brake drum on it. We're going to go cut this this shifter up. We're going to go put a something for a cable to go through on the end of that, but we got to keep the brake drum from spinning, so something has to tie back to the front end to keep that from rotating when you hit the brakes, and it's got to be just the right spot so that it's when you're going over the bumps, that this brake drum is not moving. You guys remember my VW trike? I ended up coming off of my off of this to mount it because it always wants to parallel itself. That ain't gonna have enough room now, is it? Depends on where we put it. If we put it straight up and down. Well, that's for tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah, we'll leave that for another day. So, yeah, again, for inspection, you gotta run a front brake. Not that that front brake will do anything to slow you down, but maybe hold you at a stoplight from rolling back. All right, guys. Again, thanks everybody for watching, commenting, subscribing, and catch you tomorrow.